If you had told me a few years ago that I make over $400,000 online by selling others people courses, I would have laughed in your face. Not because I didn't want it, I just genuinely didn't understand how any of this worked. I was that guy, jumping from one business model to the next, hoping something would finally click. I tried drop shipping, SMMA, reselling sneakers, affiliate marketing. I even tried Amazon FBA at one point. And every single time I convinced myself this was going to be the thing that finally changed my life. But the truth is, I was just desperate. I was tired of watching, other people living the life that I wanted while I couldn't even get one thing to work properly. And what made it worse is that I genuinely believed I was doing something wrong every time a business model didn't work out. And I thought maybe I wasn't smart enough, disciplined enough, or talented enough. And I'd be sitting here on my laptop watching YouTubers talk about just run ads or just buy low and sell high, and all this bullshit. And I was burning what little money I had left on Facebook ads that didn't even convert, and trying to figure out how to stand out in a saturated SMMA space where every beginner looks the same. And after a while, it starts to mess with your head because you keep seeing these kids online making more money in a month that your parents made in a year or in a fucking lifetime, and you start asking yourself if you're just unlucky or if something actually wrong with you. But even during that period, one thing I never did was give up. Yes, I was frustrated a lot. I was broke, but I was confused all the time, but I always felt like I was close, you know? With that feeling, I didn't know what I was close to, but I knew that if I kept going long enough, something would eventually work out. And that's exactly what happened. I stumbled into a business model that finally made sense for me. And ironically, it wasn't even a business model that required me to be an expert in anything. I didn't need a massive audience. I didn't need to spend thousands of dollars on ads. I didn't need to guess my way into a saturated market. All I had to do was help creators sell their own digital products better than they were doing on their own. And that's how everything changed for me. That's how I ended up making over $400,000, not by selling my own course, not by building a giant personal brand, but simply by selling other people courses in a way that most people don't even realize is possible. So in this video, I want to walk you through exactly how this happened, why it works so well, and how you can do the same thing. Even if you feel like you've already tried every business model under the sun, because trust me, I've been in exact same position, and this is the first thing that actually pulled me out of that zone, of that moment. So let's get into it. When I look back at the beginning of my journey, it's almost funny how convinced I was that I needed to find the perfect business model. I kept thinking there was this one magical thing out there, and if I just found it, everything in my life would fall into place. And because of that, I just spent years bouncing around from one model to another, like I was speed running the entire make money online industry. Every time a new model got popular, I was right there trying it, hoping this would finally be the one that stuck. And dropshipping was my first real attempt. Everyone online made it sound so simple. Find a product, you run some ads, and then you watch all the orders roll in, and you become rich. And I spent hours scrolling through AliExpress, trying to find the winning product that would somehow change my life. But all I really did was lose money on ads I didn't understand and deal with suppliers who took like 40 days to ship just a fucking toothbrush. And when people weren't happy with the shipping times, of course, guess who they blamed? Not the supplier, they blamed me, obviously. And at some point, it became very clear that I wasn't building a business. I was more like gambling. And every dollar I spent on ads felt like, pulling a slot machine and hoping, and praying I would hit the jackpot. And yeah, after drop shipping, I tried SMMA, and the idea made sense in theory. Help businesses get customers and charge them a monthly retainer. But once I actually got into it, I realized how crowded it was, and every business owner I talked to had already been pitched by other a million guys my age saying the exact same thing, using the same script, promising the exact same results. And there was nothing unique about it. And on top of that, I didn't even have real results to show. So why would anyone choose to work with me? Yeah, I remember sitting in Zoom calls trying to sound confident, while deep down I knew I was barely holding the whole thing together. And after that, I moved into sneaker reselling, reselling sneakers. And for a while, it felt like maybe this could be the one that worked because, at least it was something tangible. I could, get the shoes, physically touch them, and then resell them. But the market was brutal, and you got bots eating up all the inventory. People flipping shoes for razor thin margins, and basically no consistent way to scale. And I make a little money here and there, but it always felt like I was just hustling and not building something, actual business. So I reached a point where I was mentally exhausted. I wasn't failing because I wasn't trying. I was failing because every business model I chose relied on things I didn't have: money for ads, a huge amount of upfront risk, deep technical skills, or the confidence to pitch myself as an expert when I honestly didn't feel like one. And it's hard to admit that when you're in the middle of it, but you see other people winning and you start wondering why these models seem to work for everyone else but you. But what I didn't know at the time was that everything I learned through all those failures, copywriting, funnels, customer psychology, attention, content, would eventually become the exact skills that made me successful. And I just didn't have the right vehicle to plug them into yet. And the turning point came when I stopped obsessing over the front-facing expert and started paying attention to the people behind the scenes, the ones who actually made the creator economy run. And that's when everything changed for me. So the breakthrough didn't happen in some dramatic way. It wasn't cinematic, or it wasn't crazy. It was more like a slow realization that kept growing and I couldn't ignore anymore. And it started when I began paying more attention to the creator space. Not as a viewer, but as someone genuinely trying to understand how the money actually flowed behind the scenes. Because if there is one thing all those previous business failures taught me, is that you can't just copy what people do on the surface. You have to understand the machine running behind it. So I started watching creators more closely. Not their content, but their business. So I checked the description, their funnel, their offers, their websites. And I kept noticing the same pattern everywhere. These creators had attention, they had influence, they had people who genuinely trusted them, but they had absolutely no idea on how to monetize any of it properly. And at first, I didn't really think much of it. I just assumed, I know, they didn't care. But the more I looked and the more obvious it became, they didn't know how to build the systems. They didn't know how to create a proper offer, structure a funnel, write a sales page, build automations, craft email sequences, or launch a product properly. And they were great at making content, of course, and that was their main skill, but everything beyond that was either missing or poorly executed. And that's when something clicked for me. I realized that all the skills that I've been learning, all the copywriting, the funnel building, marketing psychology, and all the stuff that I picked up during those failed business attempts, creators desperately needed someone with those skills. They just didn't know where to find them because most people who knew this stuff were trying to build their own businesses instead of partnering with creators who already had an audience. And the moment it truly hit me was when I DM'd a creator just out of curiosity. I wasn't even pitching anything. I just mentioned, a small improvement they could make to their landing page, something simple. And instead of ignoring me, like other business owners did back when I was doing SMMA, this creator responded immediately, and he asked if I could help him, fix that. So I ended up helping that creator for free at the beginning, just to see what would happen. I fixed their landing page, tweaked some copy, and helped reorganize the structure of the offer. And within a couple weeks, they messaged me saying their conversion increased and asking if I could help them build out a full funnel. And that's when I realized that I was onto something real. That one experience made me realize how massive the opportunity really was. If one creator needed this much help, then there had to be thousands of others in the exact same situation. And once that clicked, the path forward became very clear. I didn't need to reinvent the wheel. I just needed to become the person creators relied on to actually make money from their audience. When I think about the early stages of working with creators, one thing that stands out is how different it felt compared to every other business model I had tried before. With dropshipping or FBA or SMMA, I always felt like I was running uphill with a backpack full of bricks. Everything was a struggle. I had to find customers, I had to convince them to trust me, I had to deal with constant objections, and then somehow deliver results without really having any leverage. But when I started helping creators, it didn't feel like that at all. It felt natural, and it felt like work was the work I was doing actually mattered. And for the first time, people were genuinely grateful for what I brought to the table. And at the beginning, though, I still saw myself as just another freelancer. I thought my job was to fix small problems here and there, rewrite some copy, adjust a landing page, improve some emails. I didn't think much of it. But every time I help a creator with one piece of their backend, they immediately asked if I could help with something else. It didn't take long before I realized that creators weren't looking for just a freelancer. We were looking for someone who understood how the entire system should work, someone who could take their content, their ideas, their audience, and turn it into an actual business. And the more I helped, the clearer it became that these creators didn't just need an extra pair of hands, they needed direction. They needed someone who could look at the full picture and say, okay, here's how we monetize this properly. Someone who could tell them which offer made sense, which didn't, how to structure the funnel, how to build a customer journey, how to create a launch strategy, how to use AI properly to speed everything up, and how to avoid wasting time on things that didn't move the needle for the business. So they needed someone who could operate while they focused on creating content. And that's when I realized that I was no longer playing the role of a freelancer, but I was starting to become something like a partner to these creators. Once I started approaching the relationship that way, the way creators saw me changed as well. They didn't see me as a freelancer anymore. They stopped seeing me as someone they could hire for a task, but they started seeing me as someone who could actually grow their business with them. And when a creator sees you that way, you stop charging tiny one-time fees and you start earning a percentage of the revenue. And you stop thinking like a service provider and you start thinking like a partner. And this is when the business actually becomes powerful, because when you structure your work around revenue share instead of one off payments, everything changes. You no longer trading hours for money. You're building a system that keeps paying you month after month without you having to depend on constant client churn. And the creator wins too, because you're suddenly incentivized to make the business work as well as possible. One thing I wish someone had told me earlier in this making money online is rarely about finding some secret trick. It's about understanding where the value is missing and stepping in to provide it. And with creators, the massive value is almost always the same. If they know how to get attention, but they don't know how to turn attention into income. So when people ask me what I actually do for creators, it's not about fancy tactics or complicated software. It's about building the structure around their audience so their business actually works. And the simplest way to explain it is, creators bring the traffic, and I build everything that happens after the click. Most creators think their job ends when they post a video, but that's only the beginning. Because attention without a system, it's just noise. So the first thing I usually do is look at what they're currently offering, if they're offering anything at all. And 9 times out of 10, the offer is either confusing, overpriced, underpriced, it's too generic, or it doesn't match the transformation the content promises. So we fix that first, because the offer is the foundation, and if the offer is off, everything else falls apart. After I do the offer, I usually move into the structure. So the funnel, the pages, the messaging, the automation. And this is where all the skills I picked up from those failed businesses suddenly became useful. When I was building dropshipping stores, I learned what makes a customer decide to buy or click away. When I was writing ads that didn't convert, I learned what kind of headlines grab attention and which ones push people away. When I was messing with SMMA, I learned how to understand customer pain points, how to speak directly to their desires, and how to make a real offer feel like a natural solution instead of a forced pitch. And all of those tiny lessons come together when you're building a creator's backend. So I build the funnel, I write or rewrite the landing pages, I craft the headlines, the sub headlines, the call to actions, and I make sure the messaging matches the creator's voice, their audience, and the outcome they're selling. And with AI, the process becomes faster, not because AI magically does everything for you, but because it helps you generate strong drafts that you can then refine and shape into something that actually resonates. AI gives you speed, but you still need direction. You still need to taste, and you still need to understand what makes people take action. Now, once the funnel is solid, I move into the email side. And most creators either don't use email at all or they treat it like an afterthought. And email is one of the most powerful parts of the entire system. It's where you nurture people, you build trust, you educate them, and you handle objections, and you guide them toward the offer. So I write the welcome sequences, the nurture sequences, the sales sequences, and I map out what emails go out, when they go out, and why they're structured the way they are. And again, AI helps a ton with this, but you're still the person who thinks about the psychology behind the words. Other things I do is I take care of the automations. Most creators don't have anything automated. Their entire business is basically held together with tape and hopes. So I build the workflows, the tagging, the segmentation, the triggers, the follow-ups, and all the stuff that ensures that no lead falls through the cracks. Finally, if the creator wants to launch, I help structure the launch itself. That means choosing the angle, preparing the content, writing launch emails, creating urgency, and making sure the audience understands why now is the right time to join. And a good launch can generate more revenue in a week than a creator has made in the past 6 months. And when you're on a rev share deal, that changes your life too. And the best part is that none of this requires you to be some industry expert. You don't need to be a famous marketer. You don't need a huge personal brand. You simply the person who knows how to take raw attention and turn it into something structured, predictable, and scalable. And creators desperately need that because they're too busy making content to handle any of this on their own. So they don't have the time, the energy, and honestly, the desire to learn all of this from scratch. So when people hear I made over $400,000 selling other people's courses, they usually imagine something way more dramatic or complicated than what actually happened. They think I must have had dozens of clients or that I was running ads or that I had some giant agency behind me, but the reality is so much simpler. The truth is, it didn't come from a big team or fancy software or some secret traffic source. It came from handful of solid partnerships and a structure that rewarded me every time the creator made money. So the biggest difference between this and every other business model I tried before is that the money wasn't tied to my time. I wasn't sitting there thinking, how many hours do I have to work to get paid this month? Instead, I was thinking myself, how do I help this creator launch something meaningful or improve something that already exists so the revenue goes up? Because I wasn't getting paid by the hour. I was getting paid by, a percentage of the revenue. And when you work with creators who already have an audience, a rev share can be life-changing. That's why I always say you don't need a lot of clients. You can make 50 to 60K with just 2 or 3 clients. My first real partnership didn't pay me anything up front, like zero. And at first that scared me because I was used to getting paid, before doing work. But I knew that if the offer worked, the backend could pay me far more than any small retainer ever would. So that's exactly what happened. The launch we did brought in more money than I have ever seen in my life, at that point. And my percentage of it was the biggest payment I had ever received. And most people underestimate how much creators can make when they actually have proper backend. They think creators make money from, brand deals or, AdSense or, but the real money is actually in the offers. And when you're the one who builds those offers and maintains the system, you're attached to the most valuable part of their business. And that's why this business model is so powerful. One thing I want to make very clear is that you don't need to be some marketing genius to do this. You don't need to be a master copywriter. You don't need a personal brand. You don't need to be an expert in anything. What you really need is the willingness to learn the basics of offer, funnels, messaging, and systems. And with AI, those basics are easier to learn than ever. What you truly need more than anything is the ability to understand creators and what they're trying to do. You need to be able to look at their content and think, okay, who's their audience? What problems do they solve? What transformation are they actually promising? And that's it. Once you understand that, AI can help you build the assets and you can refine all the assets with your own judgment. The second thing you need is patience. I mean, not years of it, but just enough to get through the beginner stage. Enough to send messages every day, study funnels, practice writing, and learn from the creators you're working with. If you're willing to get through the first few months of discomfort, you'll be ahead of 95% of people who quit before they even start. And finally, you need to understand that you don't begin as a partner. You begin by helping. You begin by making yourself valuable. And once the creator sees that you actually understand their business, that's when the partnership conversation becomes natural. Now, if you're watching this and wondering where to start, the answer is simple. Choose a niche, find the creators in that niche, and start reaching out. And look for creators who have attention but no real backend. Look at their description, their funnel, their links. And if something missing or is broken, you already have an angle. You already have something that you can use when you do the outreach. So send them a thoughtful message, not a script, not a spammy pitch. A message that shows you actually looked at their content and you have real ideas for how they could monetize better. And if you want to take it a step further, record a short Loom video breaking down exactly what you would improve. And creators love this because it shows initiative and it shows that you actually understand what they're trying to do. And from there, just be patient. You don't need 10 clients. You just need one. One good partnership is enough to change your income for an entire year. And once you get that first win, everything gets easier. So I really want you to focus on getting that first client. And if you want to go deeper and learn this model step by step, I created a full 5-hour course on AI infoscaling where I break down everything in detail, offer, funnels, outreach, automation, launches, AI workflows, everything you need to know to start. And it's the first link in the description. So if you made it this far, I want you to really sit with something for a moment, because everything I shared in this video isn't meant to inspire you in some superficial way. It's not meant to convince you that you need to copy my exact path or that becoming some behind the scenes operator is the only way to make money online. What I want you to take away from this is much, much simpler. That there is real opportunity out there if you're willing to look in the places that most people ignore. And for years, I kept trying business models where I had to force everything. I had to force ads to work. I had to force clients to pay me. I had to force myself to pretend I had skills I didn't really have. And none of it felt natural and none of it clicked. And it's not because I wasn't trying. It's because I didn't understand that the path of least resistance is often the one where you're actually solving a painful problem for someone who already has momentum. Creators have the momentum. They have the audience. They have the influence. They have the trust. The only thing they don't have is the system. And if you learn how to build that system, even at a basic level, you can change your entire financial situation, because you're stepping into the part of the creator economy where real money flows. You're not selling your own course. You're not on camera. You're not relying on luck. You're partnering with people who are already halfway up the mountain, and you're helping them climb the rest of the way up. So if you've been struggling or feeling stuck, this might be the thing that shifts everything for you. Not because it's easy, but because it's the first model where you aren't starting from scratch. You're building on top of people who already have an audience, who already have demand, and who already have attention. So you're just giving them the piece that they've been missing. As I said, if you want to go deeper, step-by-step breakdown of how this business model works, from outreach to building offers to funnels and everything else, first link in the description, full course, 5-hour plus, everything you need to know. But whether you're watching or not, the bigger message is this. Don't let this just be another video you watched or forgot about. Something in your gut is telling you that this might be your moment to finally start building something real. Then just listen to it, and just take a step, reach out to a creator, build one funnel, record one Loom, and do something that moves you forward. Because the opportunity is here right now and someone is going to take it. The only question is it going to be you, or you're going to let someone else take it? And one other thing, if you want one-on-one support on how to sign your first creator, how to build everything, all the systems and all the SOPs, everything you need to succeed in this business, you can work one-on-one with me. You're gonna find a link in the description to apply, and if it's a good fit, we're gonna start working together, and I'll make sure you sign your first creator and you get your first 10K a month. But yeah, for this video that's it, and I'll see you in the next one.